Right, recorder. Oops. Where'd my recorder go? There it is. Heavenly Father, thank you very much for this time to get together and to fellowship and study your word. And we know you're causing all these things, and we're grateful for all the things that you do. And we ask you give us more gratitude and more faith to appreciate the good fruit you're going to bring from these difficult things that you send upon us. So we ask tonight would give us great understanding and increase our faith and give us the ability to endure all that you're going to send our way. In Christ's name, amen. So welcome everybody. We're here in our Sunday night study, and we've been doing a series on emotions, and we're on to the new topic tonight of greed. And it's always interesting how every time you're going to do a study, you've got to talk about things that you've been through, right? You can't just talk about it in the abstract. And so I work in the finance business. I work in money management. And so I am surrounded by money every day, and I'm forced to think about it every day. And so it's interesting as you pay attention to yourself and others and people in the business. You start to see when greed and covetousness show up. And I've really come to see very personally through helping people through circumstances how absolutely destructive it is, and how greed is the absolute opposite of doing true ministry. I mean, true ministry is seeking to profit someone else and help them grow at any cost, whatever it takes for you to do that. And greed is the exact opposite. It is getting what I want for me at any cost for you, to your detriment, no consideration for how my selfish ambition impacts your life. So greed is an incredibly important topic, and the world actually understands greed pretty well. I've come to see that the world is pretty good at identifying problems. They just have no ability to truly solve them. So greed is listed as one of the 7 deadly sins. There's plenty of stories in Greek mythology and Roman mythology. We'll talk about the story of King Midas later, about what his greed did to him and how it brought him no profit. So the world is not ignorant to the fact that greed can be bad and that it can be destructive. They just have no power to overcome it, and sometimes it's often even justified just to get what you want when you want it. So there's these verses in 1 Timothy chapter 6 that do a really great job of striking to the root of what greed is. It says, "But godliness with contentment is great gain." That's the opposite of greed, is contentment with what God is providing. "For we brought nothing into the world, and we cannot take anything out of the world. But if we have food and clothing, with these we will be content." Well, that's a pretty low standard. I mean, most of us, most of the time, have more than food and clothing. Sometimes we do struggle with even that, and the Lord will provide a way to get that need met, and it sure does feel good when your basic needs are satisfied after suffering. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation, into a snare, a trap, into many senseless and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evils. It is through this craving that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many pangs. Now, it doesn't say that money is evil. It says the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. And as we go through this study, we're going to see how when you love things of the flesh and things of the world, money is just one symbol of that. Money is just how you obtain those things. But when you love the things of the world and that is your God, there is this wake of destruction you leave behind you. There's just these flocks of evil spirits that come in your heavens and just wreck everything. But you don't see it at first. At first, it actually feels somewhat satisfying because you're getting what you want. And then as you look back behind, you're going to start to see this 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 line of dead bodies you're leaving, the people you're stepping over, the things you're doing that is doing the opposite of what Christ came to do to save the world, we end up destroying it through greed and covetousness, which is really rooted in what do we love? Because that's what you're going to pursue. This is probably, if I had to pick two favorite verses in the scriptures, these are them. And it's Proverbs 30, verses 8 and 9. And it says, remove falsehood and lies far from me. Give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with the food allotted to me. Other translations say, feed me with the food convenient for me. Just give me whatever is best for me, lest I be full and deny you and say, who is the Lord? Or I be poor and steal and profane the name of my God. So there's the two sides of the narrow way. When we get too much of anything, where you don't have any trials or any thorns or any need, you forget God and say, why do I need him? I'm doing perfectly fine on my own, right? Which really ends up resulting in pride, which is total destruction. And then the other side of the road is to be so poor and to lack in the basic necessities of life that you curse God, right? And you start to violate his commands and seek idols to get those needs met. So we don't want either one of those. We just want whatever is convenient for us. And that is, it depends on the person what is neither riches nor poverty for them. It depends on your abilities, how your mind works, how you were raised, what your circumstances are. You know, for what riches or what neither riches nor poverty looks like for one person is not the exact same for another. So don't judge each other according to the flesh and say, well, he's got a healthy bank account. That can't be a godly person, right? Or they don't have very much. They must really be evil and sinful because they're not more successful. Like, no. It's the Lord will determine what is our appropriate spot in all physical things in life, whether it's money or health or education or wisdom or knowledge. He knows what is that narrow way. So don't judge each other after the flesh. So this is a really interesting description of the problem of covetousness, also called avarice. And James dug this up out of his pile of dictionaries and encyclopedias. This is the Encyclopedia of Biblical, Theological, and Ecclesiastical Literature. Big fancy name, but really great description. So I'm going to read some selected parts of this. Avarice is also a part of covetousness. They're pretty much synonyms. It consists in amassing either for the sake of possessing or from fear of future want. It's the idea of accumulating things for one of two reasons. One is you just love it and you want to have a bunch of it. You like to sit there and count your silver, right? Or it's fear of future need. You're so worried about the future to an ungodly extent that you hoard, right? Saving is good and godly and wise, but hoarding to an unprofitable extent is not good. This phase of covetousness is the surest mark of a cold heartedness and worldliness, making pure, high, and holy aspirations impossible. You cannot pursue and acquire the things of the Spirit of God if you're covetous, because you value the wrong things. And you're going to spend all your energies and your efforts pursuing vanity, pursuing things that are going to flee away anyway. And we're going to talk about the balance of how you properly treasure physical possessions and how that is good, and how you can love them too much and how that is bad. And you can fall off either side, and they're both equally destructive. In fact, in the levels of hell, I forget which Greek writer it was, and in the level of hell they described in their book that talked about the sin of greed, he had both the person who was oppressing the poor and too rich right there in the same place with the people that were poor because they did not properly value physical things and were lascivious. Those are two sides of the same problem of not properly handling things that are physical. It's also a sort of idolatry, for it is the love of mammon. You can only love God or you can love stuff, right? Pick one. You can't do both. It's essentially uncharitable and incapable of affection, meaning brotherly affection. If a brother or sister be naked or destitute of daily food, and one of you say to them, depart in peace and be warmed and filled, I'll pray for you, right? But you don't give them those things which are needful for the body, what does it profit, right? You need food and clothing. Covetousness is as painful as it is deceitful in the end. It cripples the natural powers, renders life miserable, and death terrible. So it's back to it's the deceitfulness of riches. So when you're first doing it, sin makes sense. It seems to be getting you what you want. You're acquiring wealth, you're gaining status in the world, whatever it is, giving yourself a false sense of security. But in the end, all these things will turn on you and be a terrible curse. And if you actually listen, it's amazing the information that we have access to on YouTube. The richest and wealthiest people of the world tell us all kinds of things they think and do. So go look at Bill Gates or Warren Buffett, or what are they doing in their later years? They're giving away billions and billions and billions of dollars. Why? Because they know it doesn't profit them. They're figuring this out. You cannot enjoy that much wealth, and their enjoyment now is in sharing it and having other people benefit from it. So the Lord has given us these things in the world to show us that generosity and sharing what we have is a very critical part of satisfaction and joy, and that hoarding is not going to bring us the peace that we think it will. The pursuits to which it leads are painfully laborious, and the care of the possessions, once secured, is equally so. What he's saying is you become a slave to your stuff. As you acquire more and more and more and more, I don't care if I used to be a workout-aholic, right? And caring for that body and physique, it was a huge burden. It's all you think about all day long. How can I get my calories? How can I eat? How can I maintain this thing? It's exhausting, just as exhausting as having a vast kingdom.
Even looking in the mirror, right?
Yes, terribly burdensome. The labor it entails is sinful, as it does not spring from love, but from selfishness and worldliness. Well, okay, I have to tell a funny story. So when I was in high school, I was kind of known for being pretty vain. And so there was, but I didn't really realize when I went back to help coach the high school wrestling team, the coach actually took me aside, and I forgot what they called it, but they basically would name the guy on the team. They would look in the mirror the most, and they would call him Mitch or something to that effect. And I hung my head, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is so bad. And sure enough, I was up there in that wrestling room, and there was this dude, all the moves, he's looking in the mirror and checking himself out, and I was like, oh man. That was a mess, and it's a burden, you know. It's not something to aspire to. As the wealth amassed by covetous is applied to the benefit neither of themselves nor of others, they undergo the severest privations in the midst of plenty. What he's saying is, once you get all this stuff, it doesn't bless you or others. You're so burdened by trying to maintain it all, and the greed and the fear and the worry and the anxiety from trying to maintain that strips you of all joy, right? And the longer you do it, the worse it gets. I mean, and I lived through it on the physical side, and it really does become a curse, not a blessing. However great the natural power of a man, it is paralyzed by this sin. To the covetous, death is horrible, as it deprives them of all to which worldly heart most clings. So the people that are oftentimes the most covetous and the most greedy are also the most fearful of physical death, because it's the end to what they've accumulated. Considering the nature of covetousness, it cannot appear strange that the apostle particularly recommends a bishop to avoid that sin. Well, if you're going to be a shepherd of the flock and you're going to be greedy and covetous, those are polar opposites, because you will not lay your life down for the sheep. You'll sell the sheep for his wool, right? And you'll go buy you some nice gold ring to wear. Or a jet, or two or three of them. The bishop or spiritual head of the community is to be spiritual, the center of the Christian life of the community. And covetousness is a mark whereby false teachers may be known. You want to find false teachers, ask the congregation what is the fruit of those teaching you. How are they laying their lives down? How are they serving the brethren? What are they doing to help others meet their needs? And if you find a people that everybody's poor and struggling and the ministers are rolling around in money, there's probably something wrong there, right? And I'm not saying everyone is going to have the exact same level of success or wealth in life, but the body should be providing for itself, teaching other people to be self-sufficient, and helping those who can't do it. And if as a minister you're not a part of doing that, then you're a false prophet and God's going to deal with us, right? That's a pretty scary place to be. So here's what Christ says about this, who Christ is the absolute perfect example of laying his life down for his brethren. Mark 4:18-20. Now these are the ones sown among thorns. They are the ones who hear the word, and the cares of this world, the deceitfulness of riches, and the desires for other things entering in choke the word, and it becomes unfruitful. So the seed is the gospel, the truth sown into you. And why is it unfruitful? Because we're deceived by riches. They promise us peace and joy and happiness. They promise us that the same things the fruit of the Spirit are supposed to bring. But when do they end up bringing? The works of the flesh, right? Murder and envy and strife and jealousies and hatred and covetousness. It produces the exact opposite. But the world lies to us constantly saying, go after this, just get this and you'll be happy, just get that. And it's just a lie. But these are the ones sown on good ground, those who hear the word, accept it, and bear fruit. Some 30-fold, some 60, and some 100. It's amazing the stories back in the Greek and Roman times. The story of King Midas has been around for a long time, and these are two very entertaining cartoons we've watched in our house over the last few days that tell the story. And so King Midas was a very rich king, and he loved gold, loved it more than anything. And so he gets granted his wish where everything he touches turns to gold. And so in these cartoons, he's dancing around, turning the tulips to gold, turning this house to gold. He's just happy. Everything's turning to gold. And then he goes sits down at his table to eat. And he picks up the cup of wine and it turns to coins and fills his mouth and he spews them out. Tries to pick up a banana and it turns into gold. Tries to bite the ham and can't eat it. And then he starts realizing that this is actually a curse. And now he can't enjoy his wealth because he loved money. And then in one of the videos also, he goes to give his daughter a kiss who he loves, and he turns her to gold. And he's just horrified. And he realized this is a terrible curse. And so he says, I would give up everything I have, my whole kingdom, just to get rid of this touch of gold. And it's so true. When you love money, you make merchandise of people. And everyone around you becomes an object to get you what you want, and you end up destroying the relationship, and then there's nothing to enjoy. Because the greatest joy is giving to others and watching them prosper. But when you're greedy, well, let me say that again. The greatest joy is giving to others and watching them prosper. And when you're greedy and you're taking from them, they're not going to enjoy anything. You're just fleecing them and destroying them. And you'll end up old and alone with your stuff, right? Or your pride, or your vanity, or your whatever it is you were so determined to build. And it's a very lonely place. So the question that we should all be consistently asking is, what do we love and treasure? And this is what Christ says, do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroy and where neither thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. That's a really, really important verse. If you pay attention to what you worry about, and it will help you see what you treasure. Now, it's certainly good to have the things we need in life. There's nothing wrong with having more than food and clothing, having a car, or the ability to travel, or a home, or things to share. I mean, those are great when what you love is what those things can do. to serve others, to spread the truth, to, enjoy that with people. That's the trick, not the thing. It's what you can do with that. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. The eye is the lamp of the body. So if your eye is healthy, your whole body would be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If the light in you is darkness, how great is the darkness? If we can't see the truth of this, if we can't see what greed and covetousness and pursuing these things produces, we're going to be completely full of darkness, which we will be at first. That's our natural default state, is full of darkness. But he will let us reap the fruit of that, and we'll start to go, this isn't working out so good for me. Maybe I ought to do something different. No one can serve two masters, for he will either hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money. So why does it say you can't serve two masters? Because you're going to think you can. You think you can straddle this bridge and do both. But God will put us in circumstances where you have to choose. You will do what prospers yourself and your selfishness and your wealth or whatever, or you're going to do what benefits others. And that's going to require a sacrifice. You're going to have to give something up in order to do that. And that's what the laying your life down part is. And that's the hard part, is there is loss in doing this. But the reward in the long run brings you the good fruit you desire. The hard part is you're denying that flesh and that selfish need in the moment to obtain what is better in the end. And people are going to look at you and, why are you doing that? And that's weird. And why are you? And it's like, because this brings the better reward, Luke 12:13-21. Then one from the crowd said to him, Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me. But he said to him, Man, who made me a judge or an arbitrator over you? And he said to them, Take heed and beware of covetousness, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of things he possesses. Your own body, your own mind, your own stuff. I mean, nothing, get this out of just dollars or possessions. It's anything. You can make an idol of anything. Then he spoke a parable to them, saying, The ground of a certain rich man yielded plentifully, and he thought within himself, saying, What shall I do, since I have no room to store my crops? So he said, I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build greater, and there I will store all my crops and my goods. And I will say to my soul, Soul, you have many goods laid up for many years. Take your ease, eat, drink, and be merry. That word soul is the word suke, and it means a life, right? So we think we've got it made. But God said to him, Fool, this night your soul, your life will be required of you. Then whose will those things be which you have provided? So is he who lays up for him treasures for himself and is not rich towards God. I mean, Christ does such an amazing job of laying this out so plainly, because you don't realize what's really valuable until you're put into those hard moments. And you're losing relationships, you're losing people, or the stuff goes away and you stand there and go, well, what do I have now? Right? You realize you don't have anything. 1 John 2:15-17, Do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the desires of the flesh and the desires of the eyes and the pride of life is not from the Father, but is from the world. And the world is passing away along with its desires. But whoever does the will of God abides forever. There's a big difference between faithfully using the things of the world to serve God and others versus loving them. The possession of things has nothing to do with whether you're godly or not. It's your perspective on what you have and how you use it. It is possible for a rich man to get into the kingdom. It's very, 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 very hard, and he's going to have to be burned and crushed and scourged, but it is possible. So it's not that riches are evil. It's how you handle and view them. 1 John 5:3, For this is the love of God, that we keep his commands, and his commandments are not burdensome. So people think that all this suffering and depriving yourself and all this obedience is just like self-affliction just because you want to be righteous. No, it's because I want to be happy and joyful and peaceful. Like this is the best way to get all those fruits of the spirit, right? So if you're really serious about having peace and joy and contentment and all those things, you will do what God says because it's the only way to really get it. Everything else is a temporary version of it that will end up cursing you and wrecking everything in due time. It may take a while, but it will wreck it. Um, John Piper wrote a really great book that influenced me during my years in the church called Desiring God. And he had that same realization. He doesn't know all the truth, but he sees some things that were really amazing. And he realized that if you really want to have joy, do what God says. Like he's the creator of this. He knows how this creation works. So do what he says, and that's what's going to bring you joy. And in that, he will be glorified because you're enjoying what he's created. So that was a huge revelation to me that Christianity, following true doctrine, it's a temporary sacrifice for an ultimately much better life and reward, both now and in the age to come. So it makes sense at all levels once you understand that. Here's Ecclesiastes 6. So Ecclesiastes is written by Solomon, who was God made an incredibly rich and wise man in worldly things for us to learn from. So what happens if you get everything in the world you could possibly ever have? Let's look at the world from that perspective, is what Ecclesiastes is. And he said, there is an evil which I have seen under the sun, and it is common among men. This happens a lot. A man to whom God has given riches and wealth and honor, so that he lacks nothing for himself of all he desires, and yet God does not give him the power to eat of it. But a foreigner consumes it. This is vanity and evil affliction. And the root of this is the way that he attains it is unrighteous. It's in covetous, it's in greed, and he can't enjoy it because he's not handling it the right way. And so therefore God is going to take it and give it to another and show him this is how you properly handle the things of the world. Proverbs 23, 4 and 5. Do not overwork to be rich. Because of your own understanding, cease. What's our understanding? That neither riches nor poverty is the way. We're told to work with our whole heart. We're told to be diligent, and we need to do that. But you can take that to an extreme. You can be a workaholic. You can make life about achieving all these things to the detriment of the bigger picture. Will you set your eyes on that which is not? For riches certainly make themselves wings. They fly away like an eagle toward heaven. And the way that I understand this is you have to enjoy the process of what work is in the faith, in the physical, and also in worldly things, all of it together. Because the Lord can take the end result. You can spend your whole life building this business or building a home or acquiring savings, and He can take it away tomorrow. He can collapse our country. He can send a tornado and wipe your house out. He can collapse our currency. So it's not in the having the possession that is the reward. It's the process and what you learn and in serving others through that process. And if he deems expedient, he'll let you keep it, right? And you still have to be diligent to take care of it, even though you know he can take it away, which is an absolutely impossible concept to get through the carnal mind. Because the carnal mind's like, well, if I can't keep it, why even go get it? It's like, because God says so, and you may need it, and he wants you to demonstrate your faith and trust in his commands by living it out through these physical things. Ecclesiastes 12, 12 and 13. And further, my son, be admonished by these. Of making many books there is no end, and much study is wearisome to the flesh. You can apply this to study as well, right? It's good to study. It's good to gain knowledge and gain wisdom, but don't be obsessed. Like, you've got to go out and keep these commands and live life and serve others and do things. But I've been through this stage where you just 24/7 buried in your Bible. It's all you do nonstop. And that's not profitable either, right? You need to have this balance of hearing, learning, and doing. And that's where the real the real enjoyment is not learning the principles. It's applying them and watching the fruit come and seeing your life change and people's lives change. That's the real reward. That's why he wrote the book, right? He doesn't want you to worship the book. He wants you to worship the one who wrote the book and do what he says. Hebrews 10:34-39. For you had, so this is going to talk about is the only way to be able to have patience and deal with all the trials the Lord is going to send is to understand that the plundering of our possessions is good because we have a better and more enduring treasure in heaven, right? If we don't have faith that our reward is better later, we're going to be very upset when he touches our stuff. We're going to freak out. So faith is a critical component of not being greedy. It says, for you had compassion on me in my chains and joyfully accepted the plundering of your goods. Why? Why were they joyful? Knowing that you had a better and an enduring possession for yourselves in heaven, right? The response is, yeah, we know God's in control. He's doing this for a good purpose. We have a better reward. He's got a plan for this, right? Therefore, do not cast away your confidence, which has great reward. For you have need of endurance, so that after you have done the will of God, you may receive the promise. Why do you need endurance? Because this is hard to endure the loss of what you've worked hard for. It's hard to suffer with health or suffer with money or suffer with loss of your family or your kids or whatever it is. It's hard. And you have to endure through that with the hope and the confidence that God is working something greater that will not pass away. For yet a little while, and he who is coming will come and will not tarry. Now the just shall live by faith. But if anyone draws back, my soul has no pleasure in him. So at the root of pretty much every sin is a lack of faith. Because when you have the faith, you believe what he says and you do what he says. But when we doubt that, we start turning to being greedy for things of the world, being covetous, being envious, being jealous, all those negative things. But we are not of those who draw back to perdition, but of those who believe to the saving of the soul. If you want to obtain your life, if you want to have all those fruits of the Spirit, you endure through and suffer the loss of all whatever is necessary. Because this is what it takes. So this is the other side of the road, that when you become so focused on the spiritual, you start to neglect and appreciate the application of being diligent in the physical. Proverbs 12:27, the slothful roasts not his hunting. He doesn't cook the food he took in hunting. And the wealth of a diligent man is precious. So God wants us to value what we work hard for, right? If you've got stuff, take good care of it, right? If you've got a job, it's the job the Lord gave you. Do it with all your might. Don't be flippant and lascivious with what he gives us. But at the same time, when he comes and takes it, know you have something better. And this is a perfectly narrow balance that we have to learn through experience. Luke 16:11, if therefore you have not been faithful in the unrighteous mammon, meaning the physical stuff, who will commit to your trust the true riches? The answer is you're not going to get it. So the only way to truly become godly and spiritual and mature is to be faithful in the physical things he put before us. And that is both taking care of it, but also being willing to let it go when he comes to take it. So there's lots of scriptural commands about not resisting evil, not going and suing people to try and recover what they've taken from us. If we don't understand we have a better possession in heaven, we will be greedy for the physical things and will go disobey all those commands to go and satisfy our short-term lusts. So what we value and the faith in that being better is critical to overcoming the sin of greed and covetousness. There's a really great organization that puts together these things called TED Talks. And they go out and they find smart, influential, experienced people in the world. And they have them do these short 10, 20, 30-minute talks about different topics. And I'm just always amazed at what the Lord reveals to them outside of the scriptures. But it witnesses to these truths. And so they did this study of they took two groups of men around World War II, and they took one group from, I think it was Princeton or one of the Ivy League schools, and they took a group of men from essentially the projects, a very poor area of Brooklyn or New York, and they tracked them for like 70, 80 years to see until they were 80 or 90 years old. And they met with them every year, met with their families and their kids, and interviewed them and asked them, how's your life going? How's your stress level? How's your happiness? How's your joy? And they looked back and they said, what was it that was the biggest determining factor of these people having good quality life? You know what the one thing was? It was quality of relationships, long-term committed quality relationships. And that is so biblical. And that's what it talks about in Mark 10, 29 and 30, where the disciples are asking Christ, what's our reward for leaving everything and following you? And he says, surely I say to you, there is no one who has left house or brothers or sister or father or mother or wife or children or lands for my sake and the gospel's. So here you are having to leave physical relationships that are not godly and it cause you to disobey his commands. But what's he going to reward you with? You'll receive 100-fold now in this time, houses and brothers and sisters and mothers and children and lands, with persecution and in the age to come. And this is confirmed in 3 John, where he says, I have no greater joy than to hear that my children walk in the truth. Right? These are the relationships he's built, these people he's poured the gospel into, and to watch them live this out and to see true family functioning as it should, that's the biggest determining factor of contentment and joy, which is all good, godly things. But it requires the laying down of your life. It requires not being greedy, not being covetous, because to get those relationships, you're going to have to lose stuff. You're going to have to sacrifice things, and it's hard, but it's worth it. So in the Old Testament, obviously the people of Israel did not have the Spirit of God as we do now. So he had to give them these literal outward commands to execute that rod of iron to get the people to do what he wanted them to do. They wouldn't just do it from the heart, right? Because their hearts were hardened. So here's what he says in Deuteronomy 15, 7 to 11. If there is among you a poor man of your brethren within any of the gates in your land, which the Lord your God is giving you, you shall not harden your heart, nor shut your hand from your poor brother. Well, why does he say that? Because you're going to harden your heart and you're going to shut your hand. That's a natural, selfish, greedy response. But you shall open your hand wide to him and willing, lend him sufficient for his need, whatever he needs. Beware lest there be a wicked thought in your heart, saying the 7th year, the year of release is at hand, and your eye be evil against your poor brother, and you give him nothing. In the year of release, in the 7th year, they had to release debts. So what he's saying is, don't think, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to release this debt at the end of the year. I'm not going to loan it to him now. I'll wait till the beginning of the next year. Then I got 7 years for him to pay me back. It's like, no, that's greedy. Like that is selfish thinking, not others thinking. And your eye be evil against your poor brother, and he give you nothing. And he cry out to the Lord against you, and it becomes sin against you. So there is a narrow way of helping others bear their own burden and being generous, but assuming you're on that narrow path, to not do what is good there, it will be a curse. And the Lord will visit those things back upon us. He's very serious about his commands. And he'll put us in a place where we have need, we won't get what we need, and we'll see what it feels like. You shall surely give to him, and your heart should not be grieved when you give to him, because for this thing the Lord your God will bless you in all your works and in all to which you put your hand. So I've been through this a lot. Probably one of the biggest fears to giving is I'm not going to have enough later, or I'm not making enough progress, or I'm not moving fast enough, right? Even in the face of someone else who genuinely doesn't have food or clothing or basic needs, you still are like, but I want to have more and I want to get farther ahead. So you have to believe that God will bless our works and he will give us what we need in time, that he will repay what we lend to the poor. And I have to remember that all the time, because Satan will send that temptation of, God's not going to reward you. He's going to curse you and take your stuff, and you're going to be ashamed and you're going to have nothing. And those are just lies. For the poor will never cease from the land. Therefore I command to you, saying, you shall open your hand wide to your brother, to your poor and your needy in your land. Because think of it like a family, right? When a kid is born, they're helpless. You got to help them out, and you got to teach them, and you got to feed them, and you got to raise them, and so the body of Christ is the same way. There's always people coming in and growing up, maturing. So there's always going to be people at a stage where they need help. Some it's more counseling, some it's more physical needs, whatever it is. So don't get hardened to this process. This is how it works, and get used to enjoying the process of raising people in the faith. Otherwise, you're going to get hard and tired, and it's just, there will be no reward in it. Here's the commands in 1 Timothy. He says, command, 1 Timothy 6, command those who are rich in this present age not to be haughty, to look down on others, to despise them for wherever they are, nor to trust in uncertain riches. Why are they uncertain? Because they can fly away. But trust in the living God who gives us richly all things to enjoy. Freddie and I were talking earlier, and I said, is it hard for God to give us what we need? And we both laughed and we're like, no, it's easy for him. So why does he not sometimes? To build our faith and to grow us and to want our faith to increase. So whenever we get in these positions of saying, Lord, I know this person has this need and I have the money, but I'm scared. Just think, is it hard for God to give you what you need later? Is it hard for him to solve this problem? No. Okay, then. Have the faith and go give your brother what he needs to make it. Storing up for themselves, let them do good, to be rich in good works, ready to share, willing to give, storing up for themselves a good foundation for the time to come, that they may lay hold on eternal life. Now, the other side of the road of this is you'll see the health and wealth gospel, the whole sow a seed, right? Give till it hurts and then God's going to bless you. That is not a good word. That's dung, is what that is. This is different. This is just not giving begrudgingly within your means, not enabling people to take advantage of you, meeting basic needs, helping people mature. That's what this is talking about in the nice, balanced way. Don't think you're going to get rich off it. You're just going to get what you need when you need it. 1 John 3:16 and 17. By this we know love, because he laid down his life for us, talking about Christ. And we also ought to lay down our lives for the brethren. So follow the pattern here. What did Christ do? He came and gave up his life and served his disciples and served the people. That's what we should do. And just to set the expectations, this is going to be difficult. You're going to have to give up things that are uncomfortable. You're going to have to not be able to prosper as much as you would if you didn't have. I mean, think about how much wealthier an individual person who's single could be versus having a family. Families are expensive, right? But then you're alone and you're by yourself. And the same thing's true in the faith. If you want to have a family, it's going to cost you something, but it's worth it. So do it. But whoever has this world's goods and sees his brother is in need and shuts up his heart from him, how does the love of God abide in him? Well, it doesn't, and that's called a false prophet. And you pick up your stuff and you run away. So that is the end of greed and covetousness. And then James has provided us here a good 8 pages of stories and references, and the scriptures have so much to say about covetousness. You can go dig into all of that. There's plenty more to confirm all these things. So that's the end here, folks. If anybody wants to add anything or make a comment, just raise your hand or let me know. Go ahead, Daniel.
Well, thank you, Mitch. This was so timely and so tailor-made for me, this particular lesson, because of where I am in my life right now and what I've been through. And, just to tell you a story, more of a testimony of, what God has brought me through. and understanding this very thing that you've been teaching about today, and that is, being greedy and disobedient and covetous, and I was all those things when I thought I wasn't, in so much that, I was blessed with finances, and this is about 11, 12 years ago, and I owned my own restaurant. I had my own little business going on. I walked around all the time with money in my pocket, and, it was just a wonderful financial time for me. But in that time, I forgot God.
Mm.
I began to just be, lustful, and I consumed all of it upon my lust, got into drugs and everything. I didn't have to punch a clock. So, idle mind is definitely a playground for the devil, as they say in the world. But, these are the things that I experienced. And, you know, and I never really rebound from it, in so much that, when going through it and, and losing a lot, I mean, family and business and money and respect and, all these things, was lost, because of that very thing, that love for money, it wasn't only a love for money that I had, but it was a idea of money, what it would make me, what it can get me, how it can, elevate me, the prestige that it would bring, and, it was just puffing me up, and I didn't realize it at the time, but, that's exactly what was happening, and until God took it all away. I was in Babylon at the time, and, you know, doing everything, I had a form of godliness, but, as the words say, denying the power thereof. But, in doing all of this, and going through this, and then God intervening and coming in and now showing me exactly what I was and exactly what those riches that I begged him for, did to me. I can now see and understand, exactly what you're teaching today, and it is a sacrifice, and, for most of us, the Lord sees that poverty is better than riches, and partial health is better than good health, and trials are better than ease, and these are the ways that he gives us strength, whatsoever may come, joy or sorrow, and I'm reminded what Paul said in Philippians 4:10, that he's content in whatever state he finds himself in. And in learning these lessons over the last 12, 13 years, that I've been going through poverty. I mean, I've been poor. I mean, not poor, poor, P-O. I can't afford the O-R.
Yeah.
Just that, drastic. But he's enriched me in bringing me to this fellowship and give me the knowledge and understanding that I need now, that if riches ever come my way again, that I could, be able to handle it and understand it. I'm involved in the deal now. Back then I was doing real estate tax lien foreclosures and, and dealing with, you said that you were in finance, so you understand I'm dealing with MTNs and BGs and, JP 54, and all of these things that can bring a lot of money, to an individual that I was chasing and have been and still is involved in those things, but with a different perspective. And I just wanted to let you know that, this particular study, just spoke directly to me, every aspect of it, and it's confirmation, of how I should be diligent and aware, of, seeking after riches, and being content. Wherever God has me is where God has me. And, I can't change it. I can't, better my situation. Only God can do those things. And I'm glad that that's the true riches right there. And understanding the love of God and understanding that it is his providence, that gives us the power to get wealth, both spiritually and physically.
Yeah, amen, amen, brother Daniel. I really appreciate you sharing your story, and it's a powerful one. To be through that experience, and the Lord will use all that wisdom you gained and those worldly ways and that knowledge. He will use that to bless you and others. So he just wants us to use it in a righteous way, in proper balance. So thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you.
I see Mike's hand up. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, thank you, Mitch. I appreciate the study too, and I appreciate what Daniel just said. It is a powerful testimony, Daniel. It it sounds like you have pretty much lived exactly what actually we all experience to a degree. Whatever it is, we may not be as far along as others were with accumulating money, but we sure wanted to be. And I want to share what it says in 2 Kings 17. What is it? What verse is that? 32 through 33, 32 and 33. Because you said you were in Babylon while you were doing this, and that's just the way it is. You know, we think we're serving God. We really believe that we're doing the right thing. We know we've got weaknesses and faults and all, but hey, we're doing pretty good. And this is what happened here in 2 Kings, and it has a story for us. And I'll just those two verses all I'm going to read there.
32 and 33, Mike? 17, 30.
Yeah. So 2 Kings 17, 32 and 33.
Okay.
So they feared the Lord and made unto themselves of the lowest of them priests of the high places, which sacrificed for them in the houses of the high places. They feared the Lord and served their own gods after the manner of the nations whom they carried away from thence. The nations that had been carried away from Palestine, from the promised land. The king of Assyria had sent back a priest to teach them the ways of the Lord. And so they thought, well, we'll just do both and everything will be fine. That's what we all think. We think we can serve God and mammon, and you can't serve two masters. And that was the part that really stood out to me, because I tried it. Obviously, Daniel tried it. You tried it, Mitch. We all try it in our own way and in our own time. And like you said, Mitch, it just doesn't work out. That's all I wanted to add to it.
Well, amen, Mike. We sure do try hard, don't we? Let me see who's next. I think Sue's hand was up first, and then Paul. Go ahead, Sue.
Hi, I was just trying to find a verse. I don't know if I can find it or not. There's a verse in the New Testament, and I'm thinking it's in Romans, and it has to do with that in the end of everything, the gifts that God gives us, all these spiritual gifts, are taking away. They're all taken away. The only thing that's going to be left is faith and hope and love. And I was thinking about some verses that kind of go along with that, because these are things that, you know, we are all naturally raised in this world to put a lot of emphasis on money. You know, kind of makes the world go round, and it is a shadow of the spiritual. And then we covet gifts. You know, when we get spiritual, we want to have those gifts, and we're all different. But First Thessalonians 1:3, remembering without ceasing your work of faith and labor of love and patience of hope in our Lord Jesus Christ in the sight of God and our Father. And then down to verse 5:8, but let us who are of the day be sober, putting on the breastplate of faith and love, and for a helmet the hope of salvation. And I was kind of trying to tie those in with Proverbs 21:26 and 11:25. The liberal soul shall be made fat, and he that watereth shall be watered also himself. And 21:26, he coveteth greedily all the day long, but the righteous giveth and spareth not. And the Lord shows us over and over again in the physical the shadow of the spiritual. And it's all this whole study that you did was so uplifting because we can see the path. We can see that it is more blessed to give than to receive, and it is blessed to give, and to have something to give that's spiritual in the way of faith, hope, and love to someone else means laying down our life. That's what it requires. The sacrifice is that it's required that's just like Jesus, because when he laid down his life, we were still at enmity with him. He didn't give it to us, after we chased after him. He gave it to us before we chased after him. And giving to those, both in the world and spiritually and in the body, requires great sacrifice of blood and flesh and life. And I know that this is just a little story, but Mike and Tobias and me and Dee were going down the gorge over here in Georgia, and it was a long way. Oh boy. And we got down to the bottom, and Tobias hadn't been there before, and Mike had a great grandfather that had worked on the gorge. So Tobias wanted to know everything about the gorge, and he goes, Mike, let's go to the right. And Mike was already kind of heading up. He's like, let's go back. And Tobias goes, let's go to the right. Let's go down to the waterfall. And Mike said, okay, and Mike went down there, and boy, did all of us have trouble getting back. It was so hard getting back. And Mike knew it, and he sacrificed himself because he wanted Tobias to see the waterfalls. And he threw himself down. Mike threw himself down to be basically trampled on, because that's what we do when we have love for one another. We sacrifice for them. We want good things for them, even if it costs us something, and especially when it does, because that gives glory to God. And we all had a real great time, and we got a lot of exercise, so that was the happy ending to that story.
Thank you very much, Sue. We appreciate your stories and all you contribute. I know you've been through a lot. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Brother Paul.
Hi. Great study, amazing contributions. I say it over and over again. I love the way the Lord puts these things together. As Daniel was sharing, and I so much appreciate that, brother. And then you had commented later on Daniel's story that there's a way to turn that to good. And I wanted to point to that Moses and Daniel were both learned in all the knowledge and wisdom of the Egyptians, Moses was, and Daniel of the Babylonians. And then we have the admonition to be wise as serpents and harmless as doves, and that's how he takes and brings good out of evil in that way when he comes into us and turns our hearts and is able to use that. So yeah, I just really appreciate everything, and I thought that really well.
Thank you very much, Brother Paul. I appreciate it. Yes, hold on.
The story about the Midas touch is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Because
sure.
As he was going,
let
me sit out here. As he was touching everything, and everything was turning to gold, you couldn't eat.
Yeah.
So if you look at it spiritually, when you're pursuing the things of this world and you're pursuing riches, you go spiritually hungry.
It's true. You starve.
You go spiritually hungry.
What's the true bread?
Until you stop realize, hey man, you know what? This is not the way to live.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start asking God for a different lifestyle, a different form of carrying out your life, instead of just being after money and possessions and riches.
That's so true. And it made me think, like, the way I experience this is I'll be thinking, because I work in a very complicated business, and it truly is a bottomless pit. There is no end to the number of investments or things you can do. And so during the week, it's very valuable to have ideas and how I can put this together and present it. But when I go too far, it won't turn off. You wake up in the middle of the night, it'll happen. On the weekends, it won't stop. Middle of the study, it'll come. And it's like that golden touch. So finally, you're like, okay, Lord, make it stop. Like, I don't want to think about this anymore, because it really is. There's no end to it. I mean, and you'll fight it and you'll fight it and you can't turn it off. And it makes you cry out like Midas, like, just take this away so I can have some peace in my mind, you know?
And it's interesting that you bring in the study, especially when what happened to me when losing that vehicle. Starting off my business, come back from California and I got ripped off. I was pretty mad at first, but then I started realizing, you know what, there's some, God did this to me for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
So I just didn't say anything. I just rolled with the punches of the feeling of getting ripped off, and I was just getting depressed and sad at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But then I started realizing that God was really preparing me for something better by taking that away from me.
Mm-hmm.
It was preparing me. It was preparing my heart not to be greedy, not to fall into the greed, because He can take it away from you anytime He wants to.
Exactly.
And I'm glad it happened now, and I didn't happen later.
Yeah.
God made a way for me to recuperate that loss, but still, the lesson's there.
That's right. That's right.
I mean, he taught me a lesson. Okay, well, I'm gonna give it back to you, but I'm teaching you that, hey, keep your heart pure and don't fall in love with all these things that
Yeah, it's true.
that I'm giving you.
Well, and just like with a physical family, like you talk about parents who are workaholics, the dad's always gone, he's always at work. Well, it's the same thing. Like a lot of us you may not have kids or a spouse right now, but it's the same deal. You can get so focused on your work, we neglect the brethren, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we've really got a treasure here. Be on the same mind, want to enjoy each other, and it's hard to turn off the work mind and spend the time and have the relationships, and it's hard,
Get into the brother zone,
brother zone. It's true. You got to shift gears.
Yeah, it's interesting. It just caught my attention because he tried to eat and he couldn't eat. So you got to get rid of that seed of greed inside of you in order for you to eat, in order for you to eat spiritually from the Lord's table.
That's right.
And
it requires a lot of faith and patience, because your carnal thought is, got to get this done today, got to work more, got to finish, got to do. And it's like, there should be some urgency, but it needs to be balanced. Don't neglect, seek first the kingdom, and He'll add these things unto you. Like stop, pray,
especially when
wait.
you said about the if you're in a position, you're a minister, and you're in a position where you're people are giving you money and all this, so you're asking for money and you're a false prophet. I came from Babylon, man. It's like at first I was faithfully giving my tithes because I thought, that's, I didn't ask questions and everything. And especially what you said, it happened to me, that you look around and you start seeing everybody hurting for money, everybody not paying their bills and asking for prayer requests and all kinds of stuff. Oh, so I could pay my, and the pastor's riding around on a Range Rover, bro. And that's why I started opening my eyes to the truth. And when I left that church and I left another one, and then I made to a point when God taught me that tithings were not part of the New Testament teachings. Bond. It's giving out of your bondage. I felt, yeah, exactly. I felt free from it. I go, really, God? I don't have to give my 10%. No, just give out of your heart, and I will ask you to give in your proper time.
There is liberty.
There is.
You just gotta be. In other words, you don't got to give. You don't have to give like every time, all the time. No. It's when God asks you to give.
That's right.
God will bring a person, a brother that is in need, and you will know. You will feel, hey, help them.
Exactly.
You know when God puts people right in front of your face to help. It doesn't take a genius to figure that out.
It just takes the Spirit of God to wipe the greed away so you can hear it.
Exactly. So.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing.
Thank you,
Freddie.
Thank you. It was ministering. It ministered to me.
Good. Thank you very much. Did you want to say something else, Sue? I see is this a new hand or up from before?
I have, according to my panel, my hand is down, but that happened to me a couple times. I don't know. It's the you know, I don't know, twin hand. I don't know.
You want to say
That's
something?
my other hand.
All right. Well, thank you all for
No.
coming very much. Oh, here's Wendy. Go ahead, Wendy, or whoever's over there.
Thank you so much for the study, Mitch, and everyone's contributions. I don't know if you had brought up this scripture when you were doing the study because we were kind of cooking and listening at the same time. So forgive me if it's a repeat. But I just think about Ecclesiastes, how he says in the book that money is the answer to all things. It's what we need to pay our bills and put food on our table and our electric and our insurances and all those things. So God knows what we have need of. So I just wanted to kind of bring that up.
No, that's a great verse, Wendy, and I thought about it a lot, and I didn't add it in there. But money answers all things, and money's good. We need it. You know, it solves a lot of problems. It's why we're able to have a study right now. We're paying for this webinar. We're in an apartment here. We've got food. We're wearing clothes. All took money, right?
Keyword.
Amen.
Need.
Need.
Not wants.
Yeah,
Money is productive. It could be productive in a positive way.
that's right.
If you use it right.
That's right.
You know what I mean? If you use it for the pleasures of the flesh, I mean, it's cursed as it is. You know, so.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Exactly.
How many people we see that like let's say like rock stars or we see them we see them all the time. They get all the music industry just gives them all this money and all of a sudden they die. Like the guy from Seattle, what's his name I forgot the band, but he died of an overdose of heroin.
Yeah.
Too much money, too much to have.
Doesn't make you happy.
It just opens all kinds of doors for sin.
That's right.
You know?
He gives you things. That's why neither riches nor poverty, right? He'll give you stuff, but he'll give you plenty of afflictions to keep you humble.
You're like, I could do this, I could do that.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
So if us as believers, if we don't ever become a big successful, rich, powerful guy or a woman, it's okay because God's protecting us from the evils of this world and from the evils that we might fall into. No, that's matter that He won't allow you to fall into it, so you can learn from it. But
He'll give us just enough.
Yeah, if He gives you a lot, it's because He wants to burn something out of you, probably.
Or
if He doesn't give you, it's because He's protecting you from getting. It's something that's already been burning your life.
Mm-hmm. It gives you the ability to properly handle it.
Yeah,
that's right. That's right, Freddie. Go ahead, Laura.
Oh, hi.
Hey, Laura.
I really appreciate what you added at the end about giving, but not to the point of being taken advantage of.
Mm-hmm.
Because for me, I struggle with greed for emotional intimacy, and I think that even though I've been blessed to give myself joyfully, like whether it be time or energy or anything like that, I haven't had the wisdom to do it wisely, and I get stuck in that cycle of giving too much to the point where I get taken advantage of emotionally, and that happens with a lot of my relationships. And like, even I think it can even happen within the body if I'm not vigilant and looking to Jesus rather than at the feet, like Steve said in the study the other day. So I really appreciate the strength offered by this study to help me guard my heart, but at the same time show love in a godly way. So thank you.
That's a really important point you're making, Laura, and I can relate to that a lot. I think when if you're an affectionate, tender person, some people are naturally that way. I've been through that a lot where, you have to have boundaries, even in giving. I mean, it's good to give, but it's good to know when to stop, whether that's time, emotions, money, anything, right? And believe me, I have been taken advantage of in a lot of different ways, and I'm slowly growing in wisdom to know when to say that's enough. But usually, to help you a little more, what I found is that it's a weakness in myself. It's that I'm trying to get there's an over satisfaction in that giving that's not godly. Like when you have a proper godly balanced perspective, you're fulfilled, and you can not have that need. Because I've been very needy in a lot of ways, and for that validation, and then it gets you to go overboard. Because when you give, you get praised, you get thanked, and you can get addicted to that, right? But it's to learn that balance it. You got to balance it.
Exactly.
So yeah, and it is. It can happen. It can happen in the fellowship because the Lord uses us to sharpen one another because we still have weaknesses and needs and stuff, and He's going to teach us what that balance is for all of us in the relationships. And the key is, identify it, confess it, forgive one another, and move forward because we're all learning because we're still weak. We're not perfect. So
Oh, we still got a lot of evil in us still.
yeah,
Like not to a point where but we still have little seeds of
the weaknesses,
wickedness inside that God wants to take out of us and burn it out.
Yeah.
Still,
Yeah. And a lot of times it's just a lack of our own self control. We just don't have the self control to. So
that's the hard one.
Yeah. But thank you so much, Laura. That's a really good point. That's going to bless a lot of people knowing how far this applies. I mean, greed is to so much more than just money. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mitch.
Thank you, Mitch.
Is your hand up again over there, Mike?
Yeah, I wanted to comment on what Laura said because I identify with it. I do a lot of speaking on the Skype and phone and all, and I know you do too. But there's a saying, and you'll identify with this too: business is not good business unless it's good for everyone involved.
That's right.
Well, that's true for spiritual business too. If you find yourself just doing all the talking, that's not good. If you find yourself doing all the listening, that's not good. Then just listen for hours, or you sit there and just talk for hours. Either one of those is a little bit overboard. There needs to be. Now, it doesn't come immediately. There is a time to have to put up with doing all the talking. There's a time when you have to put up with listening. You need to be able to do both, but there needs to be a growth towards a give and take in a conversation and in a relationship. That's a balanced relationship, one where you're both giving, where you're both receiving. That's right. All I wanted to add to that.
That's right. Yeah, and to add to that, Mike, I've had to learn it's when someone's in crisis, you're going to listen more. And that's natural. Listen, it's fine, let them do it. But when it goes on and on and on, eventually it's wrong to continue to allow it to go on endlessly. You've got to be firm and step in and say, this isn't helping you anymore. We need to grow in this relationship, in this conversation. And that's hard to do. And sometimes it upsets someone, but that's what's necessary to go to the next step. Because a lot of people have never been told. No one's ever helped them see that. So Angel and then Wendy.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Angel.
Thanks for the study. The young lady that just spoke, I'm bad with names. Was it Laura?
Yeah, Laura.
I want to thank her for bringing that up. I was thinking it, but I didn't say anything. But I really thank her for bringing that up and that God moved her to say it because in my past, I've been one that would give. And like you, Mitch, would give to a fault. And God has taken those abilities for me to give of time, of money, it seemed like everything. He just stripped me of it. And he showed me through the stripping of the things that I was able to give in my past. He showed me, one, how to give from a godly place before he's even blessed me with the ability to give monetarily through receiving. And he's showing me daily through my spiritual walk about receiving and giving. And so as Laura mentioned about helping her and praying for her about what she's going through, I think about myself and giving of your time and being taken advantage of. To have the wisdom, and if you don't have it, pray and ask God for the wisdom to know when to say no, and this is beyond what I can really do. And like you said, Mitch, sometimes we give because of what you receive in return. People thank you, and they feel grateful for what you've done, whether it's physically helping them. And so God has shown me a lot of things about my beast, the giants that are in my heavens that have been identified, and some are being destroyed. Some have already been destroyed. And so I thank you for sharing all of this evening. I also want to thank you, Mike, for mentioning about the listening and talking, because I think we all can learn from that. There are some of us like myself that when I'm not sick, I love to talk, but I've learned a long time ago that it's a give and take, and it needs to be a balance. And we need to be bold and learn when to speak up out of love and tell our sister or brother and even people in the world when it's not a crisis, as you stated, Mitch, but it's just always somebody always doing all the talking, and they won't let you get your foot in, edgewise, and you're always the listener, or you're always the talker. And for those that love to talk, I'm glad that Mike mentioned this so we can be more conscious, and if not conscious and ask God to make you more aware that it needs to be a balance. So thank you for this study and all the studies that you presented, Mitch and Mike. And please keep me in your prayers about this bronchitis. I feel better than I felt earlier today, and I hope that I'm feeling a whole lot better come tomorrow morning.
Well, you're certainly in our prayers, Angel, and appreciate your comments. They're good lessons. It takes a lot to figure them out, but it's worth it in the end.
Yes.
Did you have something else, Wendy? Or Marcia, or whoever's over there?
I didn't. My pan was just still up. Sorry about that.
All right.
Thank you very much for the study.
You're very welcome. Well, thank you all. It was good to have y'all, and Lord willing, we'll be back next week. Not sure it'll be, but we'll figure something out. Night, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, Laura. Love you.
Love you guys.
Good night, Laura. Night, everybody.
Good night.
I love you guys too.